Lioness Op turns Joe into the great mystery of Season 3, Episode 3 recap. Despite the violence escalating to an increasingly uncomfortable level in the name of realism, there is no denying that the third season of Lioness Op is excellent, and 3 episodes in, I think I finally understand why. Taylor Sheridan has largely abandoned the show's more traditional Lioness structure to turn Joe McNamara, Zoe Saldana, into the center of the operation itself. Until now, in one way or another, the upward trajectory of Cruz Manuelo's Laislada Oliveira had been the heart of the action, even with the unhealthy intensity with which Joe commands her team and her missions. The season is unfolding across 2 simultaneous timelines, Joe's kidnapping on American soil and her captivity in the present, while we follow what happened 6 months earlier and led to this point. The mystery is not simply who kidnapped Joe. We know they are Russians. The far more disturbing question is how they managed to discover who she was, where she lived, track her movements, and ultimately abduct her in broad daylight on American soil. And The Bear is Infected, the 3rd episode, finally begins to provide an answer. Or, as every good spy story should, it replaces one question with an even worse one. We go back 6 months, immediately after Joe concludes that Oleksandra Balakin probably gave her name to the Russians. Cruz, Kyle, and Tex have already taken the Ukrainian agent in for questioning, but Kyle has no intention of taking chances. While he talks to Oleksandra in the United States, Cody and Grady are in Kiev, inside the home of her mother and sister. This is no abstract threat. If Oleksandra is lying, her family is within the CIA's reach. But Oleksandra insists that she did not betray Joe, and, little by little, her story begins to make sense. More interesting than simply proving her innocence is the way she dismantles the logic of the investigation. Joe has been looking for the person who gave up her name when the problem may be much bigger. There does not need to be a single traitor when there is an entire information network operating inside the United States. Kyle and Cruz come away convinced that she did not expose Joe. Joe, naturally, wants to hear it from her herself. That is when the episode gets really good. Oleksandra proves that she knows about an old Lioness operation involving al-Zarqawi. In other words, information that should have been buried deep inside American intelligence has already reached the Russians. A personal aside here, we learn about the tragic death of Aliyah Amrohai, Cruz's great love and one of the collateral victims of the espionage world. The coldness with which Cruz receives the news, sitting beside her current girlfriend and last season's target, Josefina, Josie Carrillo, immediately made me think, run, Josie. Still, I was sadly grateful for the update and quickly held on to what came next. When Oleksandra meets with Joe, Caitlin, Byron, and Amber Whalen, she explains how Russian intelligence builds its network of assets in the United States and hands over a dossier of people working for Moscow. Then comes the piece of information that completely changes the scale of the story. Oleksandra still has high-ranking assets, and they include 5 sitting U.S. senators. There is the infection of the title. Joe spent 2 seasons traveling to countries where she had to figure out who the enemy was. Now the enemy may be walking down the same corridor, wearing the same badge, moving through Washington, and sitting inside the very institutions that are supposedly there to protect her. And that makes Joe's kidnapping much more frightening. Because we are no longer talking only about Russian retaliation for the capture of Alexei Yurimov in Ukraine. We are talking about a structure capable of locating a CIA operative inside her own country without apparently drawing attention, until it is already too late. Oleksandra proposes a trap. Make Yurimov's capture public and watch who reacts. Joe likes the idea but, naturally, makes it even more dangerous. There is no need to reveal his name. The government only has to announce that a Russian agent has been captured on American soil. Anyone inside the network will know exactly who they are talking about. Oleksandra will be released, followed by the CIA and turned into bait to draw the Russians out of hiding. Byron still wants to think about it. Joe has already set the plan in motion. And this is where Lioness makes the smartest move of the episode. We finally return to the present and find Joe still in captivity. Bound, deprived of sleep, with water dripping relentlessly onto her face, she is forced to watch the very press conference that announced, 6 months earlier, the capture of the Russian agent. So that operation never ended. Perhaps it has only just begun. The episode still does not reveal exactly who gave Joe up, and I am glad it does not. Quite the opposite. Oleksandra, who seemed like the most obvious answer in the previous episode, now appears to be just one piece of an extraordinarily larger network. And the fact that Joe's kidnappers force her to watch that press conference suggests that her capture is directly connected to the trap she created 6 months earlier. Joe tried to force the Russians into the open. At some point, they became the ones watching her. At the same time, Lioness Op continues to do something that has always been one of its greatest strengths, but carries even more weight this season, showing that there is no longer any separation between Joe's war and her family. Kate gathers everyone and asks her mother to walk away from the job. Joe replies that she is a soldier and that the freedom her family enjoys exists because people are willing to do exactly what she does. It is a sincere defense, but it no longer solves the problem, because Kate and Charlie are paying for that choice too. Even an apparently ordinary drive becomes an operation when Two Cups and Randy interpret a nearby car as a possible threat. For the first 2 seasons, Neil waited for Joe to come home from the war. Now, the war has reached their front door. And that is what is making this 3rd season work so well. Zoe Saldana remains extraordinary in the action sequences, but Lioness is no longer depending on them. The suspense lies in discovering how much the Russians know, how long they have known it, and who, inside the United States, is helping them. 3 episodes in, the CIA's greatest asset has become its greatest vulnerability. Joe used to hunt people hiding in the shadows. Now Joe is the one being hunted.